I used to think faith was a crutch, not a ladder to heaven, just a wooden stick people leaned on when life felt too heavy to stand. I'd been that person once, sharp-tongued, confident, sure that reason alone was my armor. I had read the philosophers, absorbed the clever debates, and dismissed religion as a comfort story for those afraid of the dark. My world was made of evidence, logic, and the hum of screens that kept me company at night. But there's a kind of silence that reason can't fill. It comes not when the arguments end, but when the soul grows weary of hearing itself speak. It comes at 3 in the morning, when the blue light of your phone can't disguise the ache in your chest. When you've read every why and how and still can't answer what for. That was my silence, thick, restless, and strangely alive. One night, after scrolling through the endless parade of cleverness online, I shut my laptop and realized I couldn't remember the last time I had felt peace. Not happiness, I had plenty of distractions. Not success, I had my achievements lined up like trophies. But peace? The kind that quiets the mind and softens the heart? I couldn't remember ever having that. I turned off the light, but the silence stayed. I remember staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was falling into an invisible well. My thoughts spun like loose wheels. What if all the noise, the certainty, the superiority, the I know better, had been my shield against something I was too afraid to face? That night I whispered into the dark, "If you're real, show me." No thunder rolled, no light broke through the ceiling. But something shifted. Not outside, within. It was like the faintest stirring of air in a sealed room. A whisper brushing against the edge of my reason. "You asked." Days passed. The silence deepened. And then something curious happened. At a cafe I often went to, someone had left a small rosary on the windowsill, just sitting there, forgotten among empty cups and sugar packets. It wasn't polished or pretty. The wooden beads were worn, the crucifix slightly tarnished. But something about it drew me in. I remember staring at it as if it were breathing. I didn't touch it that day. I wasn't ready, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next week, I kept seeing rosaries on wrists, in car mirrors, even on a stranger's keychain. It was as though they were quietly following me. My rational mind scoffed, but my heart whispered, "Pay attention." One evening, curiosity won. I found myself searching online. What is the Rosary? The words on the screen sounded foreign. Decades, mysteries, Hail Marys, meditations on the life of Christ. I remember rolling my eyes at first. It all seemed ritualistic, repetitive, outdated. But then I read a line that stopped me. The Rosary is not about reciting words. It's about holding the hand of Mary while walking through the story of salvation. Holding the hand of Mary. Something in me broke open. Maybe it was the longing for tenderness, for a presence that didn't demand proof or performance, just closeness. I didn't know Mary, I barely knew Jesus, but something about the image of a mother walking with you through the mysteries of life pierced the armor of my skepticism. That night, I searched for an image of the Rosary again just to look at it. The beads seemed alive in the light of my screen, small worlds of prayer linked in a chain of mercy. I didn't pray, not yet, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hunger, a hunger not of the mind but of the soul. I began noticing how empty my so-called enlightenment felt. My days were filled with information but not wisdom, stimulation but not meaning. My intellect was sharp but my heart was numb. I could deconstruct faith in a sentence, but I couldn't build peace in a lifetime. And now, in the quiet hours, something or someone was waiting for me to stop running. That night, I went back to the cafe. The Rosary was still there. Dust had settled on it, and for a moment I wondered if I should just leave it. But something inside urged me, pick it up. I reached out, half expecting some pang of guilt or superstition. But what I felt was warmth, a strange, deep familiarity, as if I were touching something that had been mine all along. I took it home. For a long time, I just stared at it under my lamp. The beads caught the light like little planets orbiting a silent center, the crucifix. And for the first time, I noticed the face of Christ etched there. Not angry, not triumphant, just sorrowful and gentle. I didn't know the prayers, so I looked them up. The words felt awkward on my tongue. Hail Mary, full of grace. Like learning a new language, ancient yet intimate. I only made it through half a decade before the words faltered. But when I stopped, I realized something miraculous. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, alive like a room where someone had entered quietly and sat beside me. That night, I didn't argue with God. I didn't demand proof. I just sat there holding the rosary, tears sliding down without reason or permission. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't scare me. It healed me. I didn't know it yet. But that forgotten rosary on the cafe windowsill was about to become the thread that would lead me from disbelief to wonder, from emptiness to presence, from doubt to devotion. And Mary, the quiet mother I never believed in, was already walking beside me. It began quietly, like dawn creeping beneath the curtains after a long night for years. My world had been built on proofs, a fortress of intellect, reason, and self-sufficiency. But now that fortress had begun to crack, not through force, but through gentleness. It was as though something soft was seeping in through the fissures. Light, warmth, tenderness. That tenderness had a name I could barely say out loud. Mary. I didn't want to admit it, but I had started thinking about her constantly. I didn't even know why. I had never been one of those people fascinated by saints or icons. Yet her image, that serene face, those folded hands, that gaze that seemed to pierce through centuries, began to appear everywhere. On street corners, in books, even in my dreams. Once, I dreamed I was walking through a vast, shadowy forest. I was lost, the path gone, the night thick around me. Suddenly, from far ahead, I saw a faint blue light. When I drew closer, I saw a woman clothed in that light, standing still among the trees. She didn't speak. She only looked at me, not with judgment, but with infinite patience. And though I didn't understand it, her gaze said everything. You've been running for so long. You can rest now. I woke with tears on my pillow. From then on, my skepticism began to feel less like a weapon and more like armor I no longer needed. I still questioned, still wrestled with my disbelief, but now there was something else moving in me, something like trust. Every evening after work, I would sit with the rosary I'd found. I didn't yet pray all the mysteries. I didn't even know them by heart. But I would hold the beads one by one and whisper the Hail Mary. Sometimes I would just sit in silence, my thumb tracing the crucifix. At first, I thought I was talking to myself. But soon, I began to sense something different. When I spoke the words, "Pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death," I could almost feel her listening. Not far away in heaven, but near, as if she was sitting in the quiet room beside me. That's when the first miracle happened. Not in the sky, but inside my soul. One evening, I received a call from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Her voice trembled as she told me that her father had passed away suddenly. My instinct was to offer sympathy, logic, comfort in words. But instead I heard myself say, "Would you like me to pray the rosary for him?" The line went silent. Then she whispered, "You pray." I smiled, a little embarrassed, a little amazed, and said, "Yes." That night I prayed my first full rosary. I didn't know the mysteries in order, so I just chose one that felt right. The sorrowful mysteries. As I began, I pictured Christ in Gethsemane, alone and trembling, and I saw my own heart there with him, afraid, uncertain, but reaching towards something greater than understanding. As I prayed, I realized something extraordinary. The rosary wasn't just words. It was a journey, a rhythm, a breathing, a slow descent into the very heart of peace. Each bead was like a step down into stillness. Each prayer a gentle knocking on a door that had always been there. And when I reached the final decade, I felt it. Not imagination, not emotion, but presence. The kind of presence that fills a room without sound or sight. A mother's presence. I wept without knowing why. I wept as though my heart had finally found its home. In that moment, I understood something that years of reasoning had never taught me. Love isn't proven, it's received. Days became weeks. My life don't change overnight, but something deep within me did. The bitterness I carried toward faith, toward believers, toward God Himself, began to dissolve. I started noticing beauty again, the way sunlight fell through leaves, the scent of rain, the quiet miracle of breath. One morning, while walking to work, I passed by a small chapel I had never noticed before. The doors were open. Something compelled me to go in. It was empty, except for a flickering candle before a statue of Mary holding the child Jesus. The air smelled of wax and old wood. I sat in the back pew, uncertain, awkward, and yet strangely at home. I remember whispering aloud, "If you're real, I'm listening." For the first time, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt alive. A thought came, not in words, but as a knowing. You've been searching for truth, but truth has been searching for you. I closed my eyes and felt an overwhelming peace, like warm light pouring into my chest. I didn't understand it, and I didn't need to. I knew one thing: I was not alone. When I opened my eyes, I noticed something small. At Mary's feet lay a basket filled with folded papers. I walked up and saw a sign, "Leave your intention." She listens. I took a slip of paper and wrote, "For the courage to believe." As I placed it into the basket, I felt something shift, a surrender, a quiet yes whispered deep in my soul. When I left the chapel, the world seemed the same, but I was not. The air felt lighter. The sky seemed bluer. Even the sound of footsteps on the pavement felt like a hymn. And that night, when I picked up my rosary again, it no longer felt like a string of beads. It felt like a lifeline, one that stretched from my restless heart to the heart of a mother who had never stopped waiting for me. Mary was no longer in the shadows. She was in the light, and I was walking toward her. The days that followed were unlike any I had known before. It was as though my mind and my soul had begun a quiet war, one I had never expected to fight. For years, my mind had ruled me completely. It was my compass, my weapon, my shield. Every question demanded an answer, every mystery a logical solution. But now, after touching something so real, so gentle and yet so beyond explanation, my mind felt suddenly small. Faith had entered the room, not crashing through the walls, but walking softly, like a mother coming to wake her sleeping child. And my mind didn't know what to do with that kind of tenderness. One part of me whispered, "You're losing yourself." Another whispered, "No, you're finding your soul." I tried to argue with what I was feeling. I read articles again, searched debates online, revisited the old voices that once gave me comfort, the voices that mocked prayer, dismissed God, laughed at miracles. But something had changed. Their words, once so sharp and convincing, now sounded hollow, like echoes in a place I no longer lived. I realized then that skepticism can become a kind of religion, one where the altar is the self and doubt is the only creed. I had worshipped certainty, but certainty had never comforted me. Now through the rosary, I had touched something greater than certainty: peace. Still, peace can be frightening when you've built your life on control. I began to feel torn in two. One evening, I sat again with the rosary in my hands. My room was dim, lit only by a small candle on the desk. I stared at the flame and said aloud, half in anger, half in longing, "Why do I believe now? What changed? I can't see you. I can't prove you. Why does my heart know you're here?" The words broke something open. My voice cracked. The candle flickered and tears fell, not of sorrow but of surrender. And in that moment, I heard it. Not with my ears, but deep within, because love is not proven. It is known. The words were not my own. They came like a breath across my soul, gentle but unmistakable. That night I prayed the luminous mysteries for the first time. As I meditated on Christ's baptism, the wedding at Cana, the proclamation of the kingdom, the transfiguration, and the Eucharist, it was as though the Gospels came alive before me. These weren't distant stories anymore. They were invitations, doors through which I could step and meet the living God. I saw In my heart's eye, Jesus looking at the blind, the weary, the doubting, and I realized I was all three. As the weeks passed, faith began to reweave the fabric of my daily life, the noise that once filled my mind, the endless worries, the running thoughts, began to quiet. I noticed I spoke more gently. I listened more patiently. Even my co-workers asked if something had changed. But faith, real faith, always calls for more. It doesn't stop at comfort. It seeks transformation. So came the next test. One night, while praying, the old voice of skepticism rose again, that cold, familiar whisper. You're imagining this. None of it is real. You're clinging to ritual because you're lonely. It was cruel, but it was clever. It sounded like truth. And for a moment, it shook me. I stopped praying mid-decade. I put the rosary down and sat in the dark, trembling. Then something unexpected happened. I reached for the crucifix at the end of the beads, that small, tarnished metal cross, and I pressed it against my forehead. I didn't say anything. I didn't argue back. I simply held it there, trembling, and whispered, "Jesus, if you are real, don't let me go." And then silence. But not the silence of absence. The silence of presence. It was as though the air itself changed. My breath slowed. My heart steadied. I felt surrounded, not by walls or reason, but by a love that was both infinite and intimate. In that stillness, I understood what faith truly is, not blind belief, but the courage to trust love even when you cannot see it. From that night forward, my rosary prayers became different. They were no longer questions. They were conversations. When I prayed the joyful mysteries, I didn't just recall Mary's yes. I felt the trembling of her trust, her courage in uncertainty. When I prayed the sorrowful mysteries, I saw not only Christ's suffering, but the mercy flowing through it, the same mercy that had found me in my unbelief. And when I prayed the glorious mysteries, I began to glimpse hope, not as a dream, but as a promise. Each bead became a heartbeat, each prayer a breath, each mystery a step closer to home. The rosary was no longer a relic of superstition. It was a living map, the path from the noise of my mind to the stillness of God's heart. One afternoon, I met a priest for the first time since my childhood. He was elderly, his eyes gentle but piercing. I told him everything, my atheism, my restlessness, the night I found the rosary, the whispers of peace. He listened in silence. When I finished, he smiled faintly and said, "You see, grace doesn't argue. It knocks softly until the soul opens the door. And when it enters, it doesn't destroy reason. It heals it." I left his office walking slowly, the words echoing in my heart. Grace doesn't argue. That night I prayed longer than usual. I felt the beads warm beneath my fingers, as though they had absorbed the light of every prayer ever spoken. And as I reached the final Hail Mary, I realized my faith had not killed my intellect. It had redeemed it. For the first time, my mind and my heart were no longer enemies. They were finally one voice, whispering together in peace. And as I closed my eyes, I knew I hadn't found the rosary. The rosary had found me. Friday evening in late autumn, the kind of night when the air itself feels heavy with silence. The world outside my window was a blur of rain and faint city lights, and I felt that old ache of loneliness creeping back. But this time, I didn't reach for my phone or my music or another distraction. I reached for my rosary. The beads were cool against my palms. And as I held them, I whispered, "Mother Mary, I don't know what to say tonight. Please just help me pray." And then I began, "In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." With each Hail Mary, I felt the rhythm of my breathing slow. The storm outside rumbled softly, like a distant heartbeat, echoing the one within me. As I moved through the sorrowful mysteries, I paused on the agony in the garden. I pictured Christ kneeling among the olive trees, his face streaked with sweat and sorrow. I saw him whisper, "Father, not my will, but yours be done." For years I had been that man in the garden, wrestling with the will of something I could not see, arguing with the silence of heaven. But now, as I imagined Christ kneeling there, I didn't see defeat. I saw love, A love that chooses to trust, even when the world feels absent of light. I whispered, Jesus, I don't understand everything, but I want to trust you like that. The candle beside me flickered as if answering. And then something happened. It began like a breath, a stillness deeper than silence. My body softened, my shoulders relaxed, and my mind, which was usually a storm of questions, grew utterly quiet. It wasn't the calm of sleep or the numbness of escape. It was presence, a presence. In that moment I felt surrounded, not by air or thought, but by a love so vast it felt alive. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was gentle, luminous, almost maternal. I closed my eyes, and there she was, not in a vision of the eyes, but of the heart. Mary, radiant, clothed in a quiet light, her gaze filled with such compassion it pierced me to tears. There were no words, yet everything was spoken. Her eyes said, "You were never abandoned. You were simply being sought." I fell to my knees. The rosary slipped through my fingers and landed on the floor with a soft sound. The rain outside faded. Time itself seemed to pause, and then came another presence, different yet one with hers. Christ, not as an idea, not as a figure from Scripture, but as someone alive, standing just beyond the veil of what I could bear to see in his silence. I understood everything, that he had been there through every season of my unbelief, in my pride, in my anger, in the nights I mocked his name. Every doubt had been a wound he carried quietly, waiting for me to let him heal it. And now, as his love filled the room, I understood the truth I had missed all along. Faith is not the rejection of reason. Faith is the recognition of love. I wept. I didn't even try to stop the tears. They weren't sorrow, they were release. Years of skepticism, fear, and self-reliance melting into surrender. I don't know how long I knelt there. Maybe minutes, maybe hour, but when I opened my eyes, the candle had nearly burned down. The rosary still lay on the floor, the crucifix glinting faintly in the dying light. I reached for it with trembling hands. When I picked it up, it felt warm, warmer than it should have been. And as I held it, I realized this wasn't just an object anymore. It was an anchor, a bridge between earth and heaven. I pressed it to my chest and whispered through the tears, I believe. I believe you're real, and I love you. A peace settled over me then, not fleeting, not fragile, but complete. It wasn't the peace of everything being explained, but the peace of knowing I didn't have to explain everything anymore. That night, I fell asleep still holding the rosary in my hand. I dreamt of light, a soft, endless light that seemed to hum with life. In the dream I heard a voice, clear and loving. Now that you have found me, never stop seeking me. When I woke, I felt new, not reborn in noise or excitement, but reborn in stillness. The kind of stillness that carries eternity inside it. In the days that followed, I began to see the world differently. The morning sun, streaming through the window, felt like a benediction. The laughter of children on the street sounded like praise, even the ache of my heart for those who did not yet believe, that too felt holy. The rosary had become my heartbeat. I prayed in the car, on walks before sleep, and with every prayer, the person behind the words, Jesus himself, drew nearer. I had spent years chasing arguments, only to discover that truth was not a formula, but a face. And now, each time I touched those familiar beads, I remembered the night heaven touched me back. A month later, I returned to the small church where I had first found the rosary in the pew. The light through the stained glass was warm and golden. I knelt before the statue of Mary, holding the same old beads. Thank you, I whispered, for finding me when I didn't believe in finding you. I placed a small white rose before her statue, the same flower I had once mocked as symbolic nonsense, and smiled. It wasn't nonsense now. It was love made visible, and as I turned to leave, the last ray of sun caught the crucifix of my rosary, flashing briefly like a spark, as if heaven was smiling back. When people asked me what changed that night, the night I prayed the rosary and felt heaven open, I always pause before answering, Because the truth is, it wasn't only a change. It was a resurrection. I didn't suddenly become perfect or pious. I didn't wake up to angels singing or visions dancing before my eyes. What changed was quieter, deeper, and infinitely more real. It was as if someone had switched on a light inside me that I hadn't known was there, and everything, absolutely everything, looked different in its glow. For the first time, I began to live with God, not merely for myself. The Rosary, which had once felt like a foreign relic, became my daily breath. Each mystery unfolded like a door into the heart of Christ. When I prayed the joyful mysteries, I learned to marvel again at birth, at beginnings, at the small wonders that had once seemed ordinary. In the sorrowful mysteries, I found the courage to face my wounds and lay them at the foot of the cross, instead of pretending they weren't there. And through the glorious mysteries, I began to glimpse the world beyond this one, not as fantasy, but as promise. Every bead was an act of surrender, every repetition a rhythm of love. Where anxiety once ruled, peace took root. Where doubt once poisoned, faith began to heal. I remember the first time I attended Mass after that night. I sat in the back pew, unsure if I even belonged there. Yet when the congregation began to pray, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners," something in me trembled. These words, the same words I had once mocked as mindless repetition, now rang with music. They were alive, and when I watched the priest raise the consecrated host, I felt a truth too deep for words. The God I had denied was now looking back at me, silent but utterly real. I whispered, "My Lord and my God." Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were the tears of someone finally home. From that day, I stopped calling myself an ex-atheist. That label no longer fit. Because faith, I realized, isn't about trading one ideology for another. It's about relationship. It's about knowing that you are known and being loved even when you could never earn it. The Rosary became my compass in this new life. On nights when fear returned, because it does, I would reach for those same beads, and Mary's calm voice seemed to whisper through the dark, "Be still. My son is here." On mornings when my mind filled with doubts about my past, my worth, my future, I would begin the Glory Be, and it would remind me, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. That simple prayer became a lifeline, a reminder that God's faithfulness doesn't flicker with my emotions. It remains as constant as breath, as near as grace. And when I prayed for others, my family still skeptical, my friends still restless, I began to realize something wondrous. The same love that had found me was now flowing through me. That's the hidden miracle of the Rosary. It not only heals the one who prays it, it becomes a channel of healing for others. One evening, months later, I found myself sitting with an old friend, someone who knew me back when I was loud about my disbelief. He looked at me with half a smile and said, "You seem different. What happened to you?" I laughed softly. "I started praying the Rosary." He blinked, thinking I was joking. "The Rosary, you?" The guy who used to argue with priests online. "Yes," I said simply, "and for the first time in my life, I'm at peace." He didn't reply, just looked at me with that quiet curiosity I used to have when I saw people who believed. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, the same questions I had once asked. That night, after we said goodbye, I texted him a photo of my Rosary and wrote, "If you ever need to talk, I'll tell you everything." Weeks later, he messaged me at 2 a.m., "Can you teach me how to pray it?" And I smiled through tears, because that's how grace works. Quietly, gently, through one heart at a time. Sometimes I look back on my old self, the man who thought he had no need for God, who hid behind intellect and irony. I don't despise him. I understand him. He was searching for meaning in all the wrong places, but now I know the ache for truth is not something to be ashamed of. It's the echo of God's own voice calling us home. And the Rosary, it's the sound of that echo made tangible. Each bead is a whisper from heaven saying, "Come closer. You are loved. You are not alone." I still keep that first rosary, the one I found abandoned in the pew, the one that changed everything. The silver of the crucifix has dulled, the cord has frayed, but when I hold it, I remember the night mercy found me. I pray it daily, not because I fear losing grace, but because I never want to forget what grace feels like. It's not about superstition or obligation. It's about love. A love that took an unbelieving heart and turned it into a temple. A love that waited patiently through years of defiance. A love that, through the hands of a mother, led her wandering child back to her son. That's what the Rosary did for me. That's what it can do for anyone. If you are listening to this and you're not sure what to believe, if faith feels like something far away, fragile, even foolish, know this: God is already nearer than your next breath. And sometimes all it takes to feel him again is to pick up the beads. Begin even with one Hail Mary. Say it not because you understand, but because you dare to hope. And one day, perhaps when you least expect it, the heavens will open too. And you'll discover what I did, that love was there all along. The Rosary didn't just change my life, it gave it back to me.